Yo, what's up? It's CB with the Films. I'm locked in with Alex Velte Music. Let's go. Alright, Alex. What first got you into music?
Man, so I guess growing up, so my dad plays guitar. He's played for, I think now probably 30 years. And so I would hear him in his office just jamming, playing like 80s rock stuff like Van Halen and Journey and Def Leppard. And I was like, man, I want to do that so bad. So hearing him do that, I told him, hey, I want to play guitar. And he took me to a guitar shop and got me this like little bitty Fender Squier mini guitar. And I was like, this is the coolest freaking thing ever. So I was a guitarist for I'm still a guitarist, but I started out as a guitarist for just years and years. And so I would say my dad got me big into music, just hearing him play guitar and listening to just a lot of 80s rock.
So, if you could describe your creative process, what does your creative process seem like?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So it's kind of developed over the past few years. So I started out as a session musician, and so and as a guitarist, like I mentioned, growing up. And so my creative process is very much I approach it as a musician, and I do mixing and mastering. And so a lot of people would think, oh, that's kind of hands off, and you're just putting the final touches and then sending it to platforms like Spotify and iTunes. And that's a big part of it, but my creative process is looking at a song someone's made and going, okay, it sounded like they were doing this, or it sounded like they were nervous to really grow this part of the song to be as amazing as it could be. I'm like, what if I got into their heads and put myself in the artist's shoe, because I'm a musician as well, and tried out, maybe they wanted this here, maybe they could want this here, or didn't realize it. And so that creative process, once I get through the technical things, when I first get the songs to mix, is I'll go, okay, let's just dig through this, and I'm gonna pretend I'm a musician for a second, and just kind of work through it and add the things that I'm like, this would sound amazing.
Right. So, as being a mixing engineer, or what kind of tools or things that you work with as far as doing that job?
Yeah, so, and that's a good question too, and this is something a lot of people will argue about, because you'll see world-class studios with enormous, what we call large format consoles, and it looks like this enormous mixing board, and they're turning all these knobs, and they're doing all this crazy stuff. For me personally, I'm a big simplicity guy, and so I've got kind of my main tools here with me. I've got my MacBook, a MIDI keyboard just for sometimes adding in little bits, and then just a pair of headphones, and just a hard drive that I keep with me. And really and truly, that is the majority of my gear. I spent a lot of time focusing in on doing a lot with a little, so that I'm not distracted and I'm not pulling tools out of a toolbox that I don't even know what they do. And so I just keep it really simple. My gear list is very short, but it's a short list of really good things that I kind of hang my hat on.
Right. So as far as being that I guess that last vessel of producing this song, as far as things that you use, how important are the different qualities that those things carry?
Yeah, so pretty much how important is it that I pick good quality gear with the stuff I do have?
Yes.
I mean, yeah, I would say very important. I mean, and the big thing is, and so growing up, we weren't crazy rich, and so it was never now that I'm playing guitar for 2 years, I'm gonna buy a $3,000 Gretsch White Falcon guitar. It's never been I can't really feasibly attain a lot of the super incredible stuff, but with that, I've saved up through the years, and just been smart with my finances and made sure, okay, I'm going to buy this really nice hard drive, and maybe pay $300 for it, and it's a box this big, and people are like, well, why the heck would you pay for a hard drive? I can buy one at Walmart for
Right.
$5. And it's because that hard drive holds all of the music that's sent to me from these artists, and if I lose it and they loved what I did, then I just did them a disservice and wasted their time. With things like my computer, I made sure to save for that. So I would say really it's important to not buy crap. Like, you don't want to buy the cheapest thing you can find, but at the same time, I don't think it's necessary that you buy the most expensive thing you can find, because there comes a point where the quality of what you buy, there's just that it's called a point of diminishing returns. Like, it's eventually it just looks really flashy, but you're paying more for the flashiness.
You mentioned artists. Like, how many artists have you worked with locally or like anywhere?
Yeah, man. So I've had just the absolute pleasure of working with since I've started like only focusing on mixing, because I've been only focusing on mixing for about almost a year now, and I've had a chance to work with just guys like William Crockett or Penn, Jeremy Swift goes by Swift Sundays, Zodiac Track, Drew Blacksmith, Lane Long. So I mean, like a growing handful of people that have started to really come together, and those guys are just awesome. Like, it's so fun right now working with a small team, and I do call them my team because like they're the people that I reach out to, and they know they can reach out to me. And it's not just about like, what service can I offer you, and then you pay me and then I say goodbye. It's really hey, like, we're in this together. We're trying to build our community of music, because that's really what music is about. But yeah, so a small handful that's starting to grow, just as the weeks go by.
That's good. As far as the mixing goes, like, there's really I understand that there's really a big part of having, like, it's basically a 3-person process. So you have the person doing the music, you have the producer who produces a beat for the, and then you also have the mixer who, do you feel like that mixing spot is like the most original spot, like it's the most important? Because if it wasn't for the mixer, do you think that a song would be just trash? Or
that's a really good question. And there's a lot of arguments I feel like just packaged in there, but my take on it is, for one, the song needs to be great. Like, the song has to be amazing. If the song is not good, and by not good I mean like in all facets, like if it just the structure of it, the feel, the emotion, the things that are supposed to be conveyed, if they're not being conveyed, if it just was poorly recorded, and it was just thrown together, like, no amount of mixing is going to fix that. It's mix engineer, not fix engineer. It's the term I've heard.
Makes your job hard, right?
And so and really, I mean, it sounds like a cop-out answer, but it's almost like every part is important. And really, my ideal customer is the person who has taken their time to write an amazing song that if you were to record it on an iPhone, it would bring you to tears, or it would make you angry, or it would make you happy, or whatever emotion they're trying to convey. But obviously you don't want to just record it on an iPhone. You want it to sound like something that could be streamed on Spotify. And so they go through the trouble of hiring a producer and making the quality and the fidelity just like incredible. And then by the time it gets to me, it's like, okay, how can I be the last set of eyes and ears and the quality control to go, okay, these things aren't quite balanced out right. This instrument needs to be quieter. This one needs to be louder. Their vocal needs to be tuned just a little bit, or the 808s aren't hitting as hard as they could. And before it's released to Spotify, a lot of people don't know this, but streaming platforms like Spotify and iTunes will actually penalize you if your song is too loud or too quiet. And so my job is to make sure that does not happen, and that once it's out there, what you hear is the thing you recorded, and not Spotify's version of, well, let me fix that up so it sounds good. It's like, I want to be the guy to make sure that it sounds good because you think it sounds good, not Spotify. And so my job is one of 3 or potentially 4 that all are just so critically important, and really just makes it way easier if everyone's just doing the best that they can, just to the standards of the industry.
Gotcha. So have you had anybody that's recorded on those iPhone versions of Sound Lab or Band Lab, whatever it's called? Have you had anybody send you anything?
Yeah.
Wanting you to?
So I've had a couple people, and this actually, for those of you listening, watching, good thing to take note of, don't send MP3s to get mixed. That's not a good idea. MP3 is what's called a lossy file format, and so like when you send an MP3, it's already like reduced down to this file, and it's kind of a final form kind of file, which you would expect to hear on Spotify or iTunes. I've had people send me just MP3s to mix. I'm like, that's not going to work, because when I reduce it again to send it out, it's just going to sound horrible. And so if you're out there and you're a musician and you're sending songs to get mixed or mastered, WAV files, they're called WAV files or AIFF. Like, it's this thing you can do in the very end of when you're exporting songs from Logic or GarageBand or whatever. I mean, really, I'm sure, shoot, CeeLo Green recorded an album on an iPad using GarageBand or something like that. Like, that's doable, but you still need to get what we call the format right. Like, it has to be a high quality audio file, or it's just not going to work.
Gotcha. And you mentioned a couple names earlier. Have you had any projects like lately that you've been working on? Have you did anything with them? And I'm gonna start a fight. Who's the best one that you've worked with?
Oh man, I hate this. So I'm gonna answer the first question to avoid the last question as long as I can. So most recent person I worked with was a guy named Drew Blacksmith, and his single is actually coming out at the point of this recording in about a week, so July 15th of 2021.
Okay.
So really stoked for that. Man, his project was just amazing, and so I'm going to give you kind of a non-answer for the second question, because there were parts about each client that I've worked with that I've loved. Drew's rough take. So when you're in the producing side of things, typically you have a rough take of like, hey, let me hear the song, just plug in, play it, sing it, and I just want to get a feel for it. So Drew's like rough take of that, where I remember we went to my dad's architecture firm, because my dad's an architect for a living, and he has his office, and we just like locked ourselves in there one night at like 7 o'clock, and I just set up a microphone in the middle of the room, hooked it up to my computer, and Drew pulled out his acoustic guitar and just kind of sat in a chair in the middle of the room. I was like, all right, let's just hear the song. And the first take was like awesome. Like, it was amazing. I was like, oh my gosh, like I didn't know like that was going to sound that great.
It's almost angelic.
Yeah, it really was. And you never, you hope the best for people. You hope that when someone comes to you and if you're a producer, and they say, hey, I've got a song, you're like, oh man, please be good.
Right.
And sometimes it's not the case, but it was definitely the case with Drew. And he just sat down, he played the song. I think we did like a second cut of it just to be sure, and just to get some like just little timing issues. But man, definitely the best rough cut from Drew. Now I also worked with a guy named Lane Long, and Lane has just been releasing a lot of music this year. It's sounding incredible. And when we did his song, Good For Me, it was cool because, how do I describe it? When we got in the studio and we were tracking his song, ideas just started coming. Like, and that to me was crazy inspiring. Like, I'd never just started going, oh, this would sound good. I know what drum part goes here. I know what bass part goes here. This needs a harmony. Like, it was so just obvious what the song needed to sound like and where it needed to go. And Lane's an incredible songwriter too, and so and those have been the two most recent projects I've done. Well, I say that actually, another recent project is a guy I work with named Brennan, and he's doing like some music for like a kids show, and it was like, I've never mixed music for a kids show, but it sounds really good. And I was like, hey, I'm learning stuff while I'm doing this. So that was super fun. And so yeah, man, it's just different aspects of these artists that I'm like, whether it's this guy can do an incredible demo, or this guy just inspires me with the way that they write. It really just comes down to those certain elements, not necessarily an overall artist, if that makes sense.
Right. So I guess to wrap it up, what's next for you in the plans? Like, what do you have coming up?
Yeah, that's a great question. My long-term goal is to just do mixing and mastering full-time, because at the moment it's a business that I'm building, and it's not it's not this empire that I hope it will be one day. And that's okay. I understand that, my dad's an entrepreneur, and so he's, been growing his business for the past 25 years. And so, for me, on kind of year one of going, all right, like I'm doing this and this is going to be a business. It's definitely my long goal is just to do this day in and day out and love it and love on people and just make great music, listen to great music, and just to really share a lot of life and a lot of experiences with people everywhere. So.
All right. Well, thank you, Alex. So that was the interview with Alex Velte Music. Make sure to give him a follow on the gram at Alex Velte. That's VELTE Music. And I'm sure he'll hit you back. And any musicians out there looking for somebody to, mix and master their piece, he's the guy to go to. So that concludes this interview, and I'll see you on the next episode.